The Diary of a Harlequin is proudly brought to you by Charles Stanley Wealth Managers, official player welfare partner of Harlequins. If you're thinking about starting your investment journey, Charles Stanley has lots of hacks and ideas on how to secure your financial future. You're listening to Diary of a Harlequin, brought to you by Charles Stanley Wealth Managers, official player welfare partner of Harlequins. I'm your host, Joe Yates-Round, and today we'll be talking to Bryony Cleall about what it takes and what it means to be a Harlequin. Bryony is a formidable prop, former teacher, director of rugby and twin, who before joining Harlequins has represented Bristol, Saracens and Wasps, whilst representing her country, England, 7 times, winning 3 Six Nations, 2 of those Grand Slams and 2 Premierships. However, Bryony's journey to the top of the game has been anything but ordinary. Breaking her leg a week after her first England cap meant an almost 2-year wait between her first and second international caps. And when you factor in then at 17 she suffered a serious knee injury, meaning she didn't play rugby for 5 years, it makes her journey even more remarkable. A qualified teacher and with a master's in educational research means she's well equipped for life outside of the game she loves. Bryony, welcome to Diary of a Harlequin.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, very glad to have you with us on today's episode. So I covered some ground in that introduction there. I think if we start with when you were 17, serious leg injury, no rugby for 5 years, I mean, that's the sort of thing that makes you question whether you really want to go back in and put your body through that again, right?
Yeah, I think that's why I had the 5 years out. I really, as a teenager, I was off to uni. I remember getting the injury. It's in a rugby game, and I remember actually a week later we had under-20s trials, and obviously my sister was there, and I remember just I turned up and I was trying to get up the stairs, and they were like, no, you really, you can't even walk. And I was like, I love rugby, this is what I want to do. And then I think the fact that I couldn't do that, couldn't play rugby for that year at least, and then it really took a knock. I think as a teenager that was what I loved to do and I couldn't do it, and then it was really difficult to navigate that kind of recovery rehab when you're probably leaving a club off to uni, that was really difficult. So I kind of just didn't get lost as such, but just didn't do it well, didn't have the resources we have now to support me, and eventually went to uni and thought, can't rugby, don't want to get hurt, don't want to go through that, because injuries they're painful, they're horrible to have, and when they're quite serious and you have to go through that, say, an operation, I really wasn't fancying that kind of aspect of rugby. So I took a step away. I went up to uni, I went to Loughborough Uni and played football, and I spent a few years playing football. Best position was in goal. Took up most of it, so it kind of worked out well for me. And then played that for a bit, and never really loved rugby, still coached, loved the sport. It's always been my passion, but just really knocked my confidence a bit. And at the time, women weren't professional.
I was going to say, did you see that? Was rugby ever a viable career, or kind of when that injury happened at 17, were you like, oh, well, it's something I might come back to for fun, but that's probably it now?
Yeah, absolutely. No one was professional at the time. You had my mum in my ear going, you need to think about your career, because obviously rugby couldn't have been a career. And as much as I loved the years before my injury, she was like, you need to think about it. So I was off to Loughborough doing sports science training. What I wanted to do was be a PE teacher at the time, and doing that. And mum was always like, make sure you've got a career. So I made sure I was sorted in that aspect. And at the time didn't know the kind of where rugby could take me and the opportunities we'd have as women in sport and in rugby. So at the time I was really chill about just playing a bit of football.
And then in that period, you mentioned obviously your sister as well, Poppy, twin sister. Did she carry on playing rugby in that period when you were away from it? And was that strange or surreal, kind of having your twin doing that thing that you loved, or is that why you went to football, to almost go, well, I'm going to just go a different route here?
Yeah, obviously I love sport, so that's why I just stayed in any sport, and team sports, it's just a different level. But having Poppy play, as parents always have kids, don't they? They always say they live their dream through their kids, but I think for that 5 years I lived my dream through Poppy, and followed her around everywhere. I remember driving from Exeter to Scotland to watch her in her first cap. Flew out to Italy and surprised her. They play in a cage, so I remember coming through the cage, probably scared her a bit, but surprised her out there. So it was really cool to watch my sister's journey. Again, they still weren't quite professional then either. So she was working at the same time as playing. But and what I kind of think one thing it did do was kind of give me a real life version of myself and where I could have been, like how good maybe I could have been if I'd stuck at it, if I'd had kind of the mindset at 17, not to be brutally honest, be a bit soft, take the easy path. I kind of go play football, still be in a team sport, still enjoy football, still go to Loughborough, still get that enjoyment out of sport, but it was really easy. What harder journey would have been to knuckle down and work really hard in that first year and then go back and play rugby, but I was a bit soft, so there I went to play. I guess footballers are a bit soft, didn't they? So there you go, went and played football. But Poppy was like a real life image of what I could have been. I could have been playing for England. I could have been doing what she was doing. And then when the women started going professional, ultimately I could have had it as a job. So I think that was a real life shake for and
I guess
how good you could have been.
For pretty much most other people, they don't have a real life version of themselves doing something and being able to watch that like you've got with a twin sister. Was there ever a rivalry on that period, or do you think that actually you were kind of like, that's Poppy's thing, so I'm going to go over here and do my other thing, but you sort of had one eye on it?
No, it never was like Poppy's thing. I think whenever we grew up as sports people, we were super competitive. Like, I don't think there was something we weren't competitive at. We played everything from hockey to netball, and everything we did was super competitive. But actually, I think that helped us in our later years, doing that and competing with each other. But as we were growing up, we went to the under-18s trials, and I remember the parents getting a letter, and one was notably thicker than the other, so they knew that person was in, and the other one was pretty thin and felt like a rejection. And we'd had to be put in separate rooms, open these letters, because it was tough. To watch, I think for Poppy at the under-18s, I got the thicker letter, she got the thinner one, and it's one thing it did for her was spur her on to go to the under-20s, but one thing also, it's tough to take that rejection and have someone so close to you also do such good things. So I think for any people, loads of parents of twins message to say, what do I do? One's got in, one's got out. And I always just say that you take different routes. There's different routes to take and to the top, and probably took one route and I took a different route. We've both been crazily successful in careers and in sport. So it's about what route you take and when and how hard you're willing to work to get there. But just because you fell at the first hurdle, if you stop and become a footballer like I did, you ain't going to make it. So that's one thing I do say to parents of twins, because it is tough to have someone who you've grown up with be so close to. And ultimately, you look at us and we look quite similar. Yes, there's a few physical attributes we're a bit different with, but it's that could have been me if I'd done this, for example. So it is tough, and there is rivalry, but again, it's kind of spurred me on to get back to rugby, knowing that there's a question mark over how good I could have been because I didn't put the effort in.
And I think that's an amazing kind of takeaway, to be able to say that you can get to the same destination on different journeys, right? And I think it's so easily kind of thrown about in the world today of just keep doing what you're doing, we can all get to the same place, or no, I've got to follow this person's path, I want to be successful, I have to tick these 4 boxes and I'll get there. And then kind of coming on to you, so you had that injury, you went and played football, you took the easy route. I'm sure lots of footballers listening will massively disagree with this. Took the easy route away from rugby. Talk me through that period then, after kind of finishing uni, doing your PGCE, doing your masters. Was teaching then, was that kind of where your focus was, and team sport was something you did kind of on a Tuesday, Wednesday evening?
Yeah, obviously I knew I had to build a career, and like I've talked about already, I'm so passionate about sport and how sport can change lives and what it can do for kids, and how, especially with rugby, how we just need to give girls and boys the opportunity to play it. Yeah. And as soon as they experience being in a team sport, being in the competitiveness and running around and having fun, then there'll be lifelong people that compete in rugby or contribute to rugby. So I was always really passionate about that. Did my undergrad at Loughborough, and then went down to Exeter to do my PGCE. Trained in that for a year, qualified as a teacher, and then stayed on for an extra year to do my master's in educational research, and then went straight into my teaching job. But that was kind of the part of life where I'd then been introduced to Jo Yap, was a coach, now a coach up at Worcester, was an under-20s coach, and also coached the Exeter uni at the time. And she was someone who instilled a lot of confidence back in me. I think coming back from injuries, lots of it is more the mental side. Once you're fit and recovered, and it's about trusting your body and trusting yourself and knowing that you've done the work. So she instilled a lot of confidence in me. Came back to rugby, but also at this point moved back to London to get a teaching job, and then worked as a teacher in South London for 3 years. Ended up doing head of girls PE and then director of rugby down there, because I think for me personally, I was really passionate to push sport to all girls and rugby.
And you talk about the influence that Joe Yap had on you. What did that look like in terms of that mental side? Were there any specific kind of methods, things that you still use now, or was it just having somebody that just said, you can train and play rugby all you like, but until you sort this bit out, that's what's going to stop you getting the whole way there?
For me, like I've worked with a lot of coaches, but like I know personally what works for me, and someone like Joe showed me that's the way I'd love to coach when I get older. But it was more of a they're invested in myself. They're invested in myself getting better as a player and a person. That they wanted to make me a better person and player, and I felt like they were in my corner, on my team. That kind of vibe. So like it wasn't. I didn't sit there and she goes, "You need to do this. Like get better at this. You need to do this." Or it wasn't like an IDP or performance based. It was more how I felt she was invested in getting to know me, helping me in kind of all aspects of my life, navigating rugby at the time at uni. And as much as then it came onto the pitch and she was like, "Oh, next time don't do this." I still felt like, if there's any issues I had, I could go to her, or any worries, she wouldn't look at me funny if I said to her, "Look, I don't want," like, I remember a certain time when I came back to it and there was a drill, and I said, "Joe, I really don't want to do that drill." Like, it was like making me nervous. And she was like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." And then we talked it over, and then they like introduced me at a level below that, because at the time I just wasn't confident. But she wouldn't be like, "Just go do it," She'd understand.
Or call you out, or like make it into something. I guess having that psychological safety, that ability to be able to say, actually, I'm not comfortable doing this. Is that something that you felt more comfortable with because of the teacher training? Do you think that you'd understood how best to teach people, so you had a better handle on how you wanted to learn?
Also I just think it's how well she knew us as players, and I think it's really, really difficult for a coach to be able to have that ability to know all your players and be able to speak to the way that works best for them. I think that's such a special skill to have, and it takes years probably to understand that, and also an investment. Like, you have to be invested in us as individuals as well as players. So it is really difficult, and I think if I could get anywhere close to that when I eventually go into coaching, or I'd be extremely happy with how I coach, because I think it's really important, but super special, and really important for women especially.
And I think you said you went then into London, kind of with this teaching job, and got to head of girls PE. What are your kind of life lessons that you take from that period working in South London teaching? I imagine that helped to shape you in a pretty specific way.
Yeah, lessons from that is, if you get knocked over one day, you just got to get back on the horse, turn up again the next. I think you can't take things too personally, and like just always remember what your goals are and what you want to do, or what you feel passionately about. Like for me, it was like getting girls into sport, and if one day, I don't know, I'd taken a knock with that, or some, like, schools are difficult places. You want to push your agenda, and for me it's PE and sport, but for the head teacher it might not be that. It's so much going on and so many things you've got to do, and like, kids need all lessons, but like for me, I'm like, sport's so important. Like, they miss a PE lesson, like it does matter, like, and if they miss a term of it, it does matter. So just because you take a knock one day, just get back on it. Get the next day, you've just got to dust yourself off and go back to doing what you do, and take the passion and your enthusiasm with you, because especially girls in PE, you've got to be high energy, do everything with high energy and enthusiasm, and get them involved in having fun and being successful. Because I always find for girls in PE, they want to be successful, and if you make it too hard, make it too difficult, they fail, and then it's just like a kind of downward spiral of how much fun they have in PE. So,
and it sounds like you've taken some of those learnings from what you were saying about your time with Joe Yap, right, into that, making it enjoyable, but also for those girls when you were teaching them, for them being able to find things that they could succeed at that was at the appropriate level. How important is that kind of in that that formative year that you don't just kind of do a one size fits all, right? With teaching for you as a student, but then you as a teacher looking at it.
Yeah, it's tough because like I loved sports, so any sport a teacher put in front of me, I was like brilliant. Bar cross country, but the rest of it, I was absolutely.
Did anyone like cross country?
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
No, absolutely not. So I it was difficult, but I just know I don't know, but from teaching for how many years, like girls are so different, and you get some that love naffs but ultimately everyone loves fun. And also being successful at something. So if you can enable that in a PE lesson, then you'll be on to a winner. But it's difficult to do that for all levels, for all people that come to your class. You might have someone who's really good at it, sport just naturally, and someone who's not. So how can you involve? So it just takes a lot of effort and planning, and then also getting to know them and building relationships up. You're with them for the year. So yeah, for your first 6 weeks, you might not be hitting your lessons right. But as long as you're getting to know them and understanding girls and what makes them tick, and then like I talked about with Joe, making it like a safe environment psychologically, at least, like one where you can fail or you can speak to the teacher and you're not going to get it thrown back at you. You're going to get someone who's there wanting you to play sport and wanting you to have fun, and CPE is a place you can go and no one's going to be mad at you for dropping a ball, etc. So I was really passionate about getting girls involved in PE and making sure everyone had the opportunity to play sports that you might be good at rugby and not good at cross country or netball. As long as we can give them a broad variety of sports, you naturally will find one that you fit into and you feel comfortable with and you feel at home.
I'm getting everyone loves fun put on a t-shirt. I think that's the key takeaway. Where were you when I was at school?
If you don't love fun, something's wrong with you.
So you mentioned, so you got back into rugby then at Exeter University around that sort of time. Then teaching in London. Were you playing rugby at that point, kind of in kind of a social or an amateur setting? When did it start to ramp up again for you?
So as I left, I was at Bristol. So a few of us would commute from Exeter to Bristol and play in the Prem there. Strangely enough, I was inside centre. Don't ask me about it. We'll just
well, you said don't ask me about it. We're coming back to that.
And then moved to London. And obviously, for me, I had my sister at Sarries. I'd had a little bit linked in Sarries over a summer once, and we were over in Sweden playing. And then I signed up there. So I'd be in South London and would commute up. I'd sit on the Northern Line end to end, occasionally fall asleep in the middle and get off up at Sarries and train in the evenings. And I did that for a couple of years, and then moved position, funny enough. Took a phone call, will you play prop? I said, oh God, I've got nice ears. But anyway, I did it. Didn't want to ruin my ears, but anyway, moved to the front row.
Talk me through that change then. Was it as simple as that, a phone call so you were playing inside centre? So
I was playing inside centre, but then I moved. I always wanted to play like 8 back row, so I was playing 6 at the time actually. Up at Saracens, I was playing 6. I think it was me, my sister and Marley Packer would own the back row. We like the enforcers. But we'd do that at the back row. I did that for a couple of years. And I would look back at my game now and say, don't get me wrong, I can carry a ball and I could do all that, but I wasn't anywhere near fit enough to play 6 at the highest level. But I had I had naturally quite a good handling skill set from coming from inside centre. Yeah, I'm naturally again a big person. I hold them attributes as a forward, so I had some good aspects of my game, but I wasn't good enough to play for England in the top level, especially playing 6, not even close. So I got a phone call and just said, look, you've kind of got the attributes to make a good prop, a very good prop. Have you thought about it? And I thought, who wants to be made a prop in their life? But then I actually looked back and thought, they're probably completely correct. I've got good hands. I'm a strong, powerful player. That somewhere, if I could hone in on some like my scrumming, which takes a fair amount of work and years, then this could be good for me. So I did it. So I went in and did it. And then that's when I got called up to an England camp.
How long had you been playing prop then when you got called up to England?
Yeah, not that long. But about half a year went in. I guess it's difficult because with the women's game, even 4 years ago, how scrumming's changed is huge.
Really?
The technicalities around it, the development, because women's game is always developing and we're catching up, and our skill sets and our physicality and all the training now we're able to put in as professional athletes the scrumming's changing.
Yeah.
So back then, not that you could get away with it, I couldn't, because many people put me in some uncomfortable positions. It was a bit different, and I think you saw Hannah Bottom move from centres to the front row, Shauna Brown moved from the back row to the front row, even Sarah Byrne played elsewhere, and then we all got kind of moved in. So there was a couple of years there where they did a lot of it.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that was? Was it bringing those technical skills that you developed kind of in your wider game into those front row positions? Was it the evolution of the game?
No. Well, one like Sarah Byrne, Hannah Bottom, unbelievable skill sets around the park, and to bring that then to put it in and have a front row who can do that, you're why would you not? So
yeah.
To have skill sets like that and be able to bring someone who you think can still scrummage, and them girls are awesome at it, that's perfect. And two, it's a bit different. As we grow up, we don't have academy setups. We don't have, or back then we didn't, we don't have that specialist training. And as a kid, who wants to play prop? Like you want to be running around chucking the ball about, thinking you're Sonny Bill. You don't want to be you don't want to be thinking you're Tad Furlong, do you? You don't want to be thinking you're Joe Marler, sorry. You want to be thinking you're others.
We're clipping that up. You don't want to be thinking you're Joe Marler, he's coming for you.
Yeah. I'd rather be Marcus Smith. But that's what you, as a child, whereas the boys I think are different. They go through the academies and they get put into positions much more sooner, and also like my under-18s coach wouldn't have known maybe where to put me, but maybe the specialist coaches they have in DPPs, is it?
Yeah.
And things like that. They put you in a position much earlier, and you play that position and train in that position much earlier. So I think as us, we get put maybe a bit late into our actual positions. So that's probably why.
But then it's an interesting thing. Do you think that that's the way that it will go in the women's game, that they'll start specialising earlier and earlier? Because kind of what you were saying is that, use sport as the example, right? You want to give those girls you were teaching that huge variety of sports because they'll find one that they like. Do you worry that in the future of the game, people will be pigeonholed too early and then they maybe don't make it as an inside centre, so they fall by the wayside instead of having that opportunity to try different positions?
Still not right now. What you'll see now is we've got girls coming through the under-20s who will make it in our front rows. I'll give you an example of Kelsey Clift at the moment, who's come through the age groups, under-18s, under-20s, and always been a front row. And perhaps to have that scrummaging behind you is going to put you in a faster period than other people. But it's about giving the specialist training as early as possible. But still, we'll have people that will move about, because again, like we say, it's until you get to senior rugby and you start playing around, you might be in the wrong. I've seen a few players this year who at the start of the year were playing inside centre, and now I've seen them playing six. There's still people are still finding out where they fit, but that's, I think, just as we start to get academies, CFVs, we'll see more players earlier, not pigeonholed, but specialist training.
So then, so you switch to prop. 6 months later, England are calling, saying, you're one of the best props in the country now. Easy as that.
Well, calm down.
Then you're in that England setup. What's the jump up like there? Because you hear it and you see it kind of in other sports, that club to international. But obviously at that point, the women's game was still largely amateur. Was there a big jump up from club to England?
So the England team had been professional for the Ireland 2017 World Cup.
Yeah.
So they'd been professional for that, and then the year later they'd stopped doing the contracts again. But the jump was huge.
Really?
Even unbelievable, yeah. From the environment, from the performance environment, the setup there, and then also the skill sets of the players. The girls that play for England and the Red Roses are unbelievably skillful and unbelievable athletes. And even back then, yes, they weren't professional, but lots of them you would have thought were professional from the physical attributes they had and how much training they'd done. But yeah, the jump up was huge.
And did you enjoy that jump up? I'm thinking about kind of your journey, to use the old X Factor cliche of that time that you'd spent away from rugby, then back in rugby, to then be back up at that highest level again. Were you, do you think, ready for it at that point?
Because even it wasn't a gain. I'd never been at that level. I missed the under-20s a few years. Poppy obviously was in that, and then I had a couple of years before becoming a senior Red Rose, but I hadn't been in that environment. So I was honestly, you should see me as like a kid in the candy shop, walking around. Even in England camp, it was like surreal. I think for anyone going to an England camp to start, you're like, should I be here? Like, am I meant to be here? But it's crazy. And then when I look back on my journey, I always think when I came back from being injured, and like even now when I go out and play, I'm just always thinking, not is this the last time, but this could be, or this.
Yeah.
Like, rugby's about memories, and my career might only go on for a few more years, but like, I'm never going to be able to play it again. So whatever I can do now to make the memories and play at the Stoop or play at the different stadiums or with different players, like in 10 years' time, I'm not going to be able to do it. So just enjoy every moment I'm doing it, and don't say no to the opportunities that come your way. You know, like obviously my poor front row mate left me in December, Shauna Brown.
Yeah.
So it comes to an end where your career stops, and it's like she's got an abundance of memories over a sickening small amount of time. But it's about like just keep making them, because you won't get to do them again.
That's a really exciting way to look at a sport and a life and a sport rather, that is so out of your own hands when that decision, because you could be the one that makes that decision, or it could be made for you via an injury or via a contract ending and then no one else wanting to resign. Like there's so many variables, and if you're going out every day thinking, well, okay, what memories are going to make today?
Yeah,
it must be quite liberating to allow you to go and play your game.
Yeah, for a few years, even recently when I've been bogged down with injury, I'm going to go back to it. It's all about having fun, and I always remember coming back to rugby, just play. Like, it's so fun. It's just a game of rugby. And when I came back from my leg break and was playing the England-Scotland game, I was getting so nervous, and I thought, what are you doing? Like, stop getting so nervous. It's just rugby. It's just a game of rugby.
Yeah.
Why are you getting worked up about it? Just go have fun, enjoy yourself, and that's what it's about. And especially this year, probably since the start of this year, with everything that happened when I was playing for Wasps and what happened to us, I remember coming here and just going, just have fun. And it reflects on how you play. It reflects on the way you play, and you're more relaxed and having a good time. And suddenly that's when I throw some outrageous offloads, you know, when you're having a good time and having fun. So it does reflect in your game. And again, I've already made a few really good memories. Little Big Game.
Yeah.
The Stoop was unbelievable. My first run out here again. So I look at it a bit like that now.
Well, and hopefully plenty more to come in your time in the quarters. So as we kind of check off the various points in your career, so you've got into that England squad, then that leg break happens and you're out again. And then it's 2 years before you're pulling that Red Rose shirt. Why do you think that injury was different to the one when you were 17? Why do you think that wasn't for you to go, I've got there, but do you know what? I'm going to go back and play football again. Had something changed in you to go, I want this now? Yeah,
I'd taken a nibble at the top carrot. Is that what do you call it? You know, taking a nibble at the top. What is it?
Taking a nibble at the top carrot. That's going on the back of the T-shirt with always have fun.
I don't know what you say. You get, I can't even think of the saying. I've experienced being a Red Roses camp. I've experienced what that looks like. I've experienced rugby now turning professional. So that I think the girls had just turned professional when I'd gone into the camp again. So they'd got their contracts back, and this was looking like a longer term thing.
Yeah.
I think the RFU were saying we're going to invest in the women's game. So again, now it was like, oh gosh, like this could be a career of yours. You could. I don't know, but like to know that you could have it as a career, do it full time, and see how good you could get. I think that's something really exciting, to be in a position where you can do that. Like how good the Red Roses can get, like to be part of a team that is one of the first professional teams in the world, and see where we could go. That was unbelievably exciting. So I think that's what had changed. I think what I could, maybe I could now see myself in that environment, being a professional player. I could see that being attainable for me. Probably before it wasn't attainable because there wasn't any professional players, but also I didn't probably realise how good I could have been. I think taking that knock really knocked my confidence. And I remember as a kid going to watch the Red Roses at the time and getting Joe Yapp's autograph on the side of the pitch and all the girls back then. And I wanted to do it, but I didn't really truly think it could happen.
Right. It was sort of a bit of a imagine if that could happen, but it won't to me sort of thing. And
then now I was like, no, this, like, firstly, I think the confidence, it was like, you are good enough, you can do it. And obviously I was at Sarries now, so times were changing and that was becoming a much more professional outfit. The ability to have S&C who was there more, and physios that were becoming full-time and things like that. So I had that support again, which helps. You need the people around you to help navigate, especially injuries. And as a 17-year-old going to uni, I didn't have
Yeah.
And I didn't have elite level sports people around me who maybe have gone through the same or experienced the same. So to have that now at a setup and at Sarries, that kind of gets you through it, doesn't it? And helps you along and makes you. I feel like I'm not one to go on the wrong path, but sometimes it's the most difficult when you've got to stick on that path and do the right thing.
Especially to do it solo. So actually having those people around you to kind of go, it's one thing to not do it because you don't want to do it, but then you go, well, hang on, this person's invested this time in me, this person's invested this time in me. Like,
so like, one, getting the right advice, because back when I was younger, I didn't know that even the nutrition side of recovery and what to do when helped, and then obviously all the physios, and now coming playing for England. I had some England physios that were helping with my recovery. I had club physios, I had more people on board, and then obviously my friends and family had seen that I've just got my first England cap and such an amazing moment in my career to then literally the game later suffer a leg break. They kind of picked me up and didn't want me again and want me to get back to them highs, because once you've experienced that, it's addictive. You want to experience that. You want to get back to that. You don't want to think that leg break's taking my career away from me. So I think the people around you is extremely important.
And then when you got that call and you got that professional contract, and suddenly this life-changing moment for you to suddenly go, hang on, I'm now a professional rugby player. First, did you call your mum and go, see, I should have kept at it in that 5 years because I could have made it professionally. But like, how did you handle that then with school where you were teaching at the time? Was that kind of this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for me, so see ya?
Yeah, it was. It was a really difficult period. My school was so good. When I first got called up to the England camp, I obviously said to the head teacher, it was Six Nations time. I said, I'm in the squad. This is the situation. Blah, blah, blah. And I played the first game, the Ireland game. And she was like, yeah. And then the next game I was NPR. So I still had to go. So I missed the time off school. So I said, look, she goes, no worries. They sorted it out for me. But I was NPR. I remember walking to school like the week later, back on the Monday morning after the game happened at the weekend. She goes, you weren't in the team? Like, why did you miss school? Because you weren't in the team? And I thought, oh God. I said, but I was, but I wasn't. So I didn't actually run out on the pitch. I didn't actually play, but I was the NPR, so non-travelling reserve, like non-playing reserve. And yeah, obviously as a non-rugby player, she didn't really understand that. She thought I'd put in a fast one. Yeah. But I had to explain to her I didn't pull a fast one. And then obviously, like for school, imagine losing your PE teacher and the head of girls' PE for that period. And as much as it's great for girls to see me go away and play rugby and play sport at a high level and know that this is a path for them, it's also tough to handle that as a school. And then obviously I had to make the awful call the week later to say I've actually broken my leg and I can't come in because I've got my legs in a cast. And so I missed a real substantial amount of that term, and that was tough for the school, and thanks to my department for covering me and honestly they were awesome for that, because that's really tough to lose a female PE teacher when I think I was the only one at the time. So thank you, Harris Crystal Palace PE department. And then I handed my notice in when I got the contract offer and did then obviously gave them the term notice and didn't come back. But I remember ringing everyone. I remember probably couldn't believe it. And then my mum and you ring your granny. Yeah. Because it's surreal to go, that's my job. I'm now a rugby player.
Was there a hesitation at any point when that contract came in? Or was it always, I'm going to do rugby, teaching's got me here, but thank you?
Like, obviously, the money was substantially less. I think it took a 50% pay cut to go into be a rugby player, to be a professional rugby player. But we could have given me 10 quid. Maybe a house, because I would have needed that one. But straight away. And even even now, I look back and obviously I'd been in such a different place financially if I'd stayed on being a PE teacher, but I wouldn't have had
memories, right?
Literally, wouldn't have had as much fun.
Fun and the memories.
No, but I would have been in such a different place, but to be able to do that, like not many people get that opportunity. So not many people afforded the opportunity to be a professional rugby player. So I took it with two hands and I haven't looked back.
And I think it's an interesting kind of point that you make, almost throwaway there, in terms of, one, that was the dream to be a pro rugby player. You didn't even think it was attainable, then suddenly it's there in front of you on a bit of paper. But to do that was taking a huge financial risk and step into the unknown by halving your take-home earnings, and you kind of say that didn't even really weigh heavily on you because you're like, well, this is where I'm at. Like, at what point after you'd signed that contract did you have to make any big decisions then in terms of your life making that big change to play rugby?
Yeah, I had to then go live with my sister. Yeah, like obviously, I think the first one was next month's pay slip, when it comes from, you're like, oh God, I don't have X amount of money, to afford to save, one, and two, to kind of live the way I lived. So I moved out of London. I was in Tooting at the time, and so then obviously we moved up to Hatfield, which is near Hemel Hempstead, north of London, and lived in a 5-bed student house. It was back to being a student. It was like academy. If anyone who plays rugby and was in the academy boys' house was literally nailed on what we were living in. Okay. Yeah.
But at a different point in your life than being.
But yeah, I wasn't 18. Yeah. So I lived in that with 5 other people, just to make it as cheap as possible. Because it is, but like I wouldn't. I don't know. Maybe you're naive because obviously I didn't at the time. I wasn't interested in saving or thinking about that. I was not young, but I was just thinking, I get to play rugby. How cool is this? But yeah, I had to make a few changes. But as long as I was able to still sustain my living, and I didn't.
But it put it into. It was not a. I think this is maybe an interesting point for people to kind of think about for the listener, that becoming a professional sports person is not all bells and whistles and suddenly you've got endorsements from this brand and you're getting all this for free and you're living the life. Like, there are some sacrifices made to get onto that ladder, and then I guess then you're starting to plot a path through that now and kind of go, right, I'm now coming towards, as you say, not just yet, but in a few years' time, there will be a life after rugby. Do you feel that you've switched to kind of start thinking about that yet, or are you still very much, if you take your, foot off the pedal with rugby, then that's when you're going to pick up an injury or going to pick something up?
No, I think you have to. I think anyone who's playing rugby and isn't thinking about their life after rugby is stupid at the end of the day. Yeah. Like I said earlier, your career could end at any time, down to you or down to an external factor. And we might have security for a year or 2 years on our contracts, but you need to look at rugby, what you're going to do after rugby, or how you're going to save, or what you're doing now to help you after rugby. And I know for me personally, I became a qualified teacher, and I have that to go back on. I've done some of my coaching badges, and I have things like that to go back on or look to when I leave rugby. So it's so important how you're working out, what you're going to do after rugby, and how you're going to afford your life after you finish. And
is that something that gets spoken about with you guys as a group of girls in the team? Because there are young girls coming through, kind of joining the first team action, I guess, at Quins. Is it your role as the experienced England players, those guys that have been professional for years, to say, look, this is great, it's on the boom, but there is going to be a cut-off? Or is it a bit like saying, like, oh, you're having fun now, but remember, there's tough stuff down the road? Yeah, no,
I think everyone in the women's rugby area, and everyone who plays, for example, here at Quins now, we're all quite realists. I think a lot of us, still a high proportion of the girls, work and have to, as rugby's something on the side, and they might get a little bit of money through that, but still they're still working and they're still trying to further their careers. So I think we're not like, I think the men's side of rugby, they go into academies, I don't know, they go to it through that way, and then they don't have maybe the qualifications that we've been able to get, because we don't see it as a really, like, at the moment there's 32 professional players in the country, but that's it. Everyone else, whereas for the men the numbers will be significantly more, even in the champ and people who are semi-pro there. So I think we're quite good at the moment at understanding that we're in the development phase of even getting to professionalism, and it's going to be a long old slog, but we're going the right way. And the fact that there's 32 of us out there, that is unbelievable, and it is such a privilege to be one of them and in that position. But I think for the girls coming through, I think they will understand that the roots, they still need to go out and do what they do. And I know, look, Maud Muir at Gloucester Hartbury is going to be a professional rugby player for a long time, but she's already gone to uni and got a qualification, Sadia Kabea is going to be a professional rugby player for a long, long time. But again, obviously I was our PE teacher. Let's just put that
right, there we are.
That's
why.
Knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Went to Loughborough and doing a degree at Loughborough. Again, going to be a professional rugby player for a long, long time, but has that qualification.
And I think that's interesting. You're going to say that there's 32 pro rugby players kind of in the women's game in England at the moment. And you go, obviously that's 32 more than zero where it was a few years ago. But it's still got a long way to go. And I think educating people to say that this is, as supporters, but even as casual followers, particularly as we look ahead to the World Cup here in 2025, what the Red Roses did last time out in terms of putting women's rugby on the map. Women's sport is only going one way, but it's got a long way to go kind of behind the scenes before we're talking about it as a fully professional sport.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's 32 Red Roses. I think there's obviously the Welsh have joined the board, the Scottish have joined the board with giving contracts and supporting their players off the pitch, I think. So there's probably a few more out there, but it's 32 of the English girls. But yeah, it's got a long way to go, I think. I've seen a few interviews recently where they talk about in 7-8 years, but I think it might be like club players might be able to be professional, but I think it might be a few more years than that. We're at a stage where, like many sports that are going through that professional development, we're in the early stages. We're getting investment, and what people are seeing is people are interested in watching us. Over 30,000 sold at Twickenham for the Red Roses game v France in the Six Nations. People want to come watch. You saw obviously New Zealand sell out for the final, and even the amount of viewers that are watching it on TV in England at 3 a.m. in the morning. People want to watch it, so we're going the right path. If you put us on TV, you give us the areas and the kind of the coverage, we'll give it back to you, and we'll put on a product that people want to watch.
Yeah, well, as you say, the product is there. It's just once people see it, more people want to see it, and it snowballs. And I think that's the exciting thing about what's to come. But as you say, it's not under the illusion that it's going to be easy and going to kind of land on a plate. But there's a lot of work to be done. And then kind of going back, so for you, so you make that move. You're in the student digs, 5 of you in your time at Saracens. And in that time, then for you, you break through. You're playing regular rugby. You then move to Wasps, and then the harsh realities of kind of financial world that we live in. That money does make the world go round at times. Come into play with Wasps and the trouble they've had this season, and then you find yourself here at Quins. So how did that move come about for you? And again, another point of, I guess, uncertainty in your career, right? To kind of go, what does this mean? What is next? Yeah,
obviously, yeah. So I was at Sarries for a few years. Obviously, moved to the front row late in my Sarries career, and that's when I looked elsewhere because like scrummaging is an unforgiving position. You need time and expertise. And down I went to Wasps to work closely with LJ. Someone who coaches similar to JF. I do. That's how I work well with my coaches. So I went down there to train there and obviously played there for the year. But then this year, obviously, over the summer, it was all up in the air. We didn't know what was going on. Obviously, week by week, it was changing, that kind of what it looked like for us. We weren't crazy closely linked with the men, but unfortunately, like for me, obviously, some of my wage was from the men. So that's how I was really linked with them. And then I think one day we just got called in to a meeting and just said, we're all being made redundant. Yeah. But what was difficult was the men's got the answers. Like the men got the answers to the questions first, not because of like they wanted it that way. It's just because we were a bit different. Our contracts sat a bit differently. Like there's probably about 6 of us that had these contracts, but they weren't like the men's contracts who were on a full-time wage. We were on like small amounts of money, stuff that supplemented our incomes. To allow me now to not live in the student digs. So it was a bit different. So they got all answered first, like kind of and we were just stuck in limbo because we could still play rugby. They couldn't. They were like, you can't play, but you can come back to the club and train in the gym. But whereas we were, you can still play, but unfortunately, we haven't got any money to pay for your medical, or you can still, So I was basically had an amount of money. They couldn't pay me anymore, but then we still were being asked to carry on playing with no medical cover, but it was very difficult. And like for me, it's a bit
wow.
different because I had a contract with England, so it did work out a little bit differently for me. But people, like for example, Lene Corson, who's over here now, had a visa and that got cancelled. So she was suddenly, it was like, mate, you're illegal now. Get out of this country, you know.
Yeah.
And then for us, it was all up in the air, and we just didn't have the answers because the men, it was like, you're not playing in the Gallagher Premiership. You've been banned because of being made redundant. You've not got contracts. You're not basically go look elsewhere. But for us, it was like, oh no, but you can still play. But
it's a lot to ask of players though, to suddenly go, oh, well, this part, kind of what you'd signed up for isn't here. But by the way, you can still run out and play on a Saturday, and you're going, well, do I want to? Like,
yeah, like it was tough because we had again, fortunately, the Women's Rugby Association, who I'm a member of, gave me a lot of advice.
Yeah.
Say it be, obviously we had a game at one weekend and it was, what happens if I play and something happens to me? And we went back and forth. Even at the time, obviously I was clubless. I said, well, is there an opportunity to go to France, for example, to play? So we spoke about that. Loads of questions about what it meant for my contract, what it meant going forward. And they've given me a lot of advice in it, because that's an area where, as we go through this professionalism, as we go through these contracts that get chucked at us, funny enough, we don't all have people to look at them or know what's going on. Yeah. Like I said, you gave me a contract when I was coming out of teaching, and I would have signed it quicker than you could say anything. Did I read it? I could have signed my life away. You know, you could have my dog in there. Like, could have been anything in that contract. But we don't know. So people are like, that's been huge for me, having that someone to go to and get advice that's independent advice. But yeah, it was really difficult because we didn't know what to do, or I didn't. Yeah, at that time I was basically clubless, because for me, being the history I've had with my injuries, it was really tough to know that any like long-term injury I probably had wouldn't have been medically covered.
Wow, that's quite the rug to have pulled out from under you. Not that you were injured, but as you say, knowing your history, like psychologically, that must have then you go, oh, hang on, this is potentially a bigger risk for me than it may be for some of the other girls. Or
like if it was really tough, and there were so many conversations we had as a player group around it, because even getting the information about it, like, we're in such a weird stage of our professionalism that we have like minimum standards to operate, but we don't really know the ins and outs of them as players. Right. We just believe or go along with it, and it's difficult because I don't know. I just play the rugby, don't you? You don't really think about this, and off the pitch, you don't really think about if your club's going to be very redundant. It didn't ever cross my mind that would be an option. So obviously, unfortunately, there was a few of us that ended up going elsewhere for our rugby. I know I live with a house. One's at Sarries now, and two of us are at Harlequins. Still live. I could throw a stone at Wasps Ground. Unfortunately, still has signed for the year, so I'm still there. And like things like that, obviously. I didn't have a large amount of money I'd get a month, but it was money that I'd factored into paying for my house or paying for the car. So it was in my kind of budget for a month. So to lose that amount of money was difficult. And I was thinking, oh God, like, what am I going to do? And I think most recently, I talked about, obviously, that's my rent for that month. Like, I didn't have that amount of money. And it wasn't like oh, by the way, in 2 weeks you're being made redundant. It was like, boom.
It's happened
you ain't
today.
Got like, you've worked the last 2 weeks, but you're not getting paid for it. And actually, can you keep working?
And by the way, you can still play if you want on a Saturday. It's kind of in your hands. So then how did the move to Quins come about? It sounds like you were taking lots of advice and looking at lots of options. Was there suddenly, again, another phone call from someone at Quins, or? Yeah,
so it was really difficult. Like, I obviously, like I said, I went to WASP for LJ and like the girls, and it was a really difficult time. And like, I would love to still be working with LJ and still being coached in that kind of environment that they built. And it was really tough to say to her, but she was so good about it. She just said, look, do what you got to do. Like, if you need to go talk to people, go talk to people. And I think she might have been out for coffee with Amy. They're good friends. And she said, oh, by the way, like, this is the situation. And Amy said, I want to have a chat with Bryce. So we caught up, had a conversation with Brent, Amy, and then I had a couple of conversations with other clubs. I spoke about going to French, but I couldn't quite understand what he was texting me in French.
So what you're saying is if you go back on your WhatsApps, there's a contract offer there, but your French wasn't good enough. And,
luckily I didn't just sign that one.
Yeah.
I had some advice this time. So again, I looked at all my options and where I could go, being where I lived, being that I've got a fiance now and a dog in London. So I kind of had to stay around here. So then, ended up signing down here, which never in my life, sorry, if you've ever played for Saracens and played in 3 Premiership finals, v Harlequins, you don't really ever think you're going to be playing for the other team. You never think it's going to, if there's rivalries, that's a massive rivalry.
What was that first day of training like when you, as you say, someone that's made your name at Saracens, walks through the door at Quins? They didn't make you sit, in a different room.
Yeah,
Did people look at you even?
Oh, the people laughed. People were like I walked in, they were like, oh my God, like, what is that kit on? You just, obviously I thought I looked great in it, but like people were just, it's just one of them. And like, I remember people would walk in the gym and be like, oh my God. Is this a...
Was there anyone that you were nervous about coming up to face on club level after, I imagine, some chat had happened on the pitch and around the pitch? You're very well behaved and respectable.
Yeah, no, like, obviously I think, having a surname Cleall, you come with the reputation of not taking any prisoners on a rugby pitch. And I've like I said, we're super competitive and like we're physical players. So I think if anyone that has them attributes on our rugby pitch, you throw yourself about a bit. So I remember I do think that reputation comes with it. But I think now if you ask people about it, like once people on a rugby pitch, people off a rugby pitch are so different.
Yeah.
And even coming here, like the perceptions I've built up of people. Sorry, Katie Mew, but I absolutely hated you before I come here. and then you meet them, and they're we're all like, for us as a group of players, we've all got a shared goal. We're all here for the love of sport, and we love pushing boundaries and wanting to take Harlequins, especially. Like that was one thing before I came to Harlequins, is I knew that how they wanted to push the women's section and how they wanted to be at the forefront of the women's sporting scene and what they want to do for women's sport. So I knew that, and Saris wanted to do it, and they were always quite 2 huge teams in doing that. Yeah. So that's one thing. Like I always had respect for what they wanted to do. But now coming here and seeing the environment, it's super professional. Yeah. And you wonder if being in a super professional environment, you lose the culture environment. But you still keep that. With what Brent does, Brent being technical director there, what he does, you can't not laugh in some of their meetings, So it's a really good high performing environment.
Good. Well, I personally think the Quins badge looks great on you. So that's the last mention of Saracens now. So look, I think I probably know the answer to this next question, given the financial elements of the journey that we've discussed so far, Bri. But would you say then that you're a spender or a saver? When that money's there, are you putting it by for a rainy day, or are you going, do you know what, I'm spending right up to the end of the month and making sure it's all gone and then start again when the pay lands?
You know what? I was a spender, an absolute spender.
Really? Like a magpie? Like if it was shiny, you're like, oh yeah.
Yeah. If you put anything in, like my sister's got this awful addiction to Gucci. So if you put anything in front of her, she's like, oh, and I'm like,
that's a tough addiction to have.
I'll get that for you from Turkey. Don't worry about it, hun. But no, I would be a spender. Like, i.e., like, I love one thing. People are like, well, what do you love? And I'm like, I love food. Okay, but like not in the way of just like eating rubbish. Like I love good, like very good food. So we have a WhatsApp group actually of good food, and it's a group of friends, and we all put places in London we've eaten and what we rate them and pictures and price range. But I love going to like exploring different food outlets in London. But I'm talking like hot, like Chinese hot, like really funky places that give you a good experience. And
what was the last great place that went on the WhatsApp group?
Oh, you want to get the phone? Okay, go on then. Well, my phone, yeah.
You've gone and got the phone. Let's have a scroll through. What are some of the places in that WhatsApp group for good food?
Are you going to see them? But I have to read them out, or you?
Got to read them out.
All right, read them out. All right, people have been to. Oh, this is a good one. All right, chote mate. It's like a Peruvian Japanese sushi place.
Oh, it sounds fantastic.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Bob Rickard's got to press the button, press the champagne button. We've got Hadilo, which is like a hot pot, which it's got broth, and then you put your meat in it and you dip it in. Yeah. Shack for you.
Yes.
Oh god, these are all Sushi Samba.
Yeah.
All right, fat crab. Okay, it's like seafood boiled in a bag. Sensational.
Really? See, seafood boiled in a bag isn't screaming sensational at me, but it's
okay. And you can get. We actually once in lockdown, like I said, foodie ordered. It's called de couture. I've said it wrong, but sorry to the guy because he has a point about saying it right. And you get it to your house, and again, I'll show you a video because it's like you're talking lobster, crab tail, potatoes, sweet corn.
We made some mad decisions in lockdown. I remember ordering a lobster and getting it delivered, and then I remember being like, why have I done that?
Yeah, what did I do? Yeah. Okay, Mildred's. Bit of a rogue left-handed one here because it's a vegan, vegetarian-only place.
All right, whereabouts?
There's one in Soho and there's one in King's Cross. Been to both.
Of course. Soho or King's Cross, which Mildred's is doing it better?
Oh, I'm going King's Cross one.
Okay.
Yeah, they had an unbelievable chicken burger. Obviously,
nice.
Vegetarian. One outside of London, but if you know it, Chicken George.
Strong. I don't know it. Chicken George.
Strong.
Okay.
It's very, very strong. I'm pretty sure it's won the London Wing Fest the last 4 years.
Okay.
What else we got? Rock and Rose in Richmond.
Yeah.
Crazy Bear in Fitzrovia. So there's plenty. Patry in Ealing. Dish Room, obviously.
Yeah.
Everyone's been there. Duck and Waffle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a fair amount. There's a couple crossed out, but I'm not going to say them because they don't deserve it. Because
really, they were on the list, and they.
I.e., there's a rating, but it's a bad rating.
Oh.
So I wouldn't do them bad. I wouldn't.
Don't do them dirty. Yeah.
But like when I'm telling you, it's a 2 out of 10. I'm not getting a mention.
Wow, 2 out of 10. That's interesting. So that's where kind of away from sport, is that like one of your other passions, like doing something that's just like you just love it and you can just switch off and just throw yourself into it.
Yeah, well, food, unfortunately, being a professional rugby player, it's not the idealist, but that's where a lot of my money would have gone on. Now, as I am looking to the future, I'm looking, obviously, recently got engaged, so I'm looking, thinking,
I was going to say,
weddings are...
Is that the next big kind of financial thing?
Yeah, and also I'm like, I need a house. People need, things like that. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, myself, if I wanted to have children, I'd be looking to save money again for that. Yeah. So I'm thinking, it's
a lot down the road.
So now I'm a saver. So now, unfortunately, I won't be going to 6 by Nico anymore.
So it's getting muted. You're like, right, I can't even be seeing these anymore. I don't need the temptation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You need sensible wedding venues being sent to you. That's next.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. But...
I'm so excited. So congratulations on getting engaged. Have you set a date yet? Have you got a time frame in mind?
It's tough. I thought it'd be. I'm quite like a laid back person. I thought it'd be really easy. But recently, having looked at a few venues and thought about it, oh my god, it's a minefield. Don't know where to start, where to go. But there you go. But no,
that's a whole separate podcast, then, isn't it? We'll come back for that.
Get me on Jamie Lang and Sophie Haboo's Nearly Wed.
That's the plug right there. That's the advert. Okay, so you were a spender, now a saver because life has kind of put you pushed you in that direction. What would be kind of your, if any, like tips financial wise, like in terms of coming through all the things you've been through? What is there one kind of rule that you go, I live by this, which is max out all your credit cards? No, it's not that. We can't say that. Is there one rule that you kind of live by? Is it have fun?
No, because like before, obviously when I was a spender, like I never wanted, before when I was a spender, I never wanted money to be a reason I didn't do something. So this is actually opposite to what I am now. I'm like, don't do that. But before I wouldn't want money to stop me from doing anything. Yeah. I remember someone the other day going to me, oh, money, money can come, you can get more, that's tough, isn't it? Not you can get more money, but like even now when I was looking at weddings and blah, 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 and I'm like, oh, but they're like, no, but that's what you work for. You work to have moments in your life where you spend your money at times. So that was always one thing before when I was a spender, I was like, I never want money to, I don't live lavishly.
No, but to stop you. You don't want that to be a reason to not go out and make the memory.
To
be like, oh no, They're all doing that, but
yeah, I never wanted money to be a reason I couldn't do something.
got you.
So yeah, I'd never go crazy with my money. Don't live a lavish lifestyle, or I drive a Ford Focus. Or did. So yeah, but I never would want money to be a reason I couldn't do something. I'd always want, even go. I know. Sorry, all my friends that have ever said to me, I can't afford that. I'm like,
really? So you're like, well, but worry about that afterwards almost.
Yeah, I'm really bad.
Grab the opportunity with both hands.
I am bad in that sense. When I was a spender, I was bad in that sense.
So have you had to change that then? You say kind of when I was a spender, have you had to change that consciously and go, oh, do you know what, I am going to miss out on that thing now? And are you just watching on as other people are posting?
I feel like I was the person that'd be like, let's all go this, let's all do that. Now I'm not that person. Like now, like our fun was last night. Like for example, last night, me and my friends, we played some poker. Obviously, no money involved. With the little friendly chips, and we all had a good cracking time doing that. But before I'd be like, let's go casino and play poker. You know what I mean? Can't do that anymore. But like I'd feel like I'm someone that it organises quite a lot of things to do with people, and then now I feel like my social life's gone downhill. That's what happens when you get engaged and you have a dog.
I was going to say, do you find that that's just something that's happened just as you kind of got older and other things have come in and you go, oh, that used to be what I'd spend my time doing, be organising that and getting the guys together and doing this, and now you're like, oh, I'm going to watch Gogglebox.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, probably. And now I don't go out I do go out for food, but only if someone's for Christmas has given me a voucher,
Nice, smart.
Yeah.
So vouchers is the way forward. Keep the WhatsApp group to go, well, I'll have a voucher then for Shack Food.
And I hate at Christmas when they're like, my mum, we're awful in my family. We have a Christmas list and that's what you buy off. Like, there's no real big surprises, bar the Calvin Klein underwear she sometimes buys me. But like there's a list and I'm like, what do I want? Like, I feel like, not that I've got everything, but like there's nothing that shouts out to me. So in the end, I just put on like 6 by Nico vouchers or vouchers for this. So that's what I get. Lots of my presents are things I like to do that I would pay for myself, but someone else is buying me for a present for Christmas.
Nice. And look, I think we're probably at the point where we can wrap up with a final question for you, Brian. Now we've uncovered your lavish spending habits on the restaurants of London, which is, look, throughout kind of our conversation, we've heard about the amazing highs that rugby has afforded you and teaching as well, and kind of everything else that's kind of been in your life. But also, there have been some big lows, right? That you've kind of come and overcome with, often injury related, but then equally with suddenly being told that your job doesn't exist anymore, right? How do you still find joy or find that enthusiasm, find that fun, right? To go and continue making memories when you're in one of those like darker periods? Are you conscious that that's where you're at in that period, or are you just approaching things in the same way every day?
Nah, like obviously for me, most recently pre-Christmas, obviously I had like one of the lowest points in my career being not getting chosen for the most recent World Cup. And when it happened, like I remember someone asking me like, do you hate rugby now? And like, no, I didn't hate rugby. Obviously I hated what had just happened, and but I didn't hate like rugby. Like I think they were like, oh, do you want to still play? And I was like, yeah, blooming hell, of course I do. But don't get me wrong, I think, again, someone said, what did you do the week after? I said, I just went around London and ate everywhere. They're like, did you get drunk? I said, no, honestly, I just ate. Like, that's what I went to.
Yeah.
I think I was up Duck and Waffle the next day, crying myself into a duck breast. But like that's like it was really tough. I had to take myself away from that rugby environment. Don't get me wrong, I didn't want anything to do with the next few weeks with that. And I wanted to be away and around the people I love and things like that. But I still loved rugby. I still loved playing the game. I still loved being in this environment. Like I think Gloucester Hartbury had a few girls that missed out on World Cup selection, and I think hearing their stories, what got them through it was that team environment and being in it. And I think at the time, obviously I wasn't here, I was at Wasp, and I didn't go in, to be honest, through them last 2 weeks because we'd just come out of England camp. But like if you're in an environment, that environment's, it's a special environment. I don't think you won't get it in a workplace, you won't get it anywhere else but with a sport team, with a rugby team, and one that, and especially when you're at the elite level, you're chucking yourself into things head first for each other. It's really truly a special environment. So like that's what would get me through it, wanting to be part of that, wanting to have the experiences on the pitch, and ultimately just have fun. Like I'm probably, there's a few of us out there that don't really like training.
Right. Okay.
Like what we love is playing.
Yeah.
But you have to train to play. So like you do the training to enable you to play, but
right.
when you're not playing, when you're injured, it's so tough, because that's what I love. I love playing. Like I'd rather, instead, don't give me a Bronco to run, let me play tag for 20 minutes. Like
yeah.
You'd get so much more out of me because I'm that kind of person. So I think, for me, when you're in them tough points, it's about the people around you and in the environment you've built, but also just remembering why you do it and what it is you love about it and how it makes you feel. We had a meeting the other day and Amy said to us, like, what's your best moment at the stoop for Quins? And we all talked about it, and she was like just go back to that feeling, the feeling you got when you're doing it. Like that's what you want to recreate, that's what you want to do, and how are you going to do that? And so then that's what kind of got me back to it, and since that moment I've probably enjoyed rugby the most at times, getting back to that. So yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's a wonderful place to wrap up, in terms of looking to catch that feeling, remember why you do it, and that'll kind of power the how, I guess.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Bryony, thank you so much for coming on Diary of a Harlequin.
No worries. Everyone knows how I spend my money now.
Yeah.